There is a family in Georgia worth more than $40 billion combined. They own the largest fast food chicken chain in America, a company that sells more chicken sandwiches per store than almost any competitor on earth, all while closing every single location every single Sunday. Their business has never taken outside investors and never gone public. No stock tickers, no shareholder meetings, no boardroom leaks. This is the story of a boy who grew up selling Coca-Cola on the street during the Great Depression, who opened a tiny 10-stool diner near a Ford factory and turned it into the foundation of one of the most profitable private companies in the country. It is also the story of his sons and daughter, who took a small Atlanta chicken stand and built it into a chain worth tens of billions, all while sticking to the same religious principles their father set on day one. This story starts in a small Atlanta suburb, in a restaurant so tiny it earned its name from its own size. Samuel Truett Cathy was born on March 14, 1921, in Eatonton, Georgia. His father worked as an insurance salesman, and the Great Depression hit the family hard enough that his father struggled both financially and emotionally for years afterward. Cathy's mother became the family's real backbone during that stretch, renting out rooms to boarders and holding things together while young Truett sold Coca-Cola on the street, delivered newspapers, and picked up whatever odd jobs he could find to help support the household. Cathy served in the United States Army during World War II. When he came home, he had no college education and very little money, but he had a work ethic shaped by years of hardship. In 1946, he and his brother Ben pooled together enough to open a small diner in Hapeville, a suburb just outside Atlanta near the Ford Motor Company assembly plant. The restaurant had only 10 stools and 4 tables, so small that the brothers named it the Dwarf Grill. The location next to the Ford plant meant a steady stream of factory workers coming through for meals, and the diner slowly built a loyal customer base. Cathy ran the place nearly around the clock, working long hours 7 days a week just to keep it afloat. That grinding schedule would eventually lead him to a decision that shaped the entire company for the rest of its history. But the idea that made Cathy's name known nationwide was still 15 years away. By the early 1960s, Cathy had been in the restaurant business for more than a decade, and he was constantly experimenting with new ways to serve food faster without cutting corners on quality. In 1961, he discovered a pressure fryer capable of cooking a boneless chicken breast in roughly the same amount of time it took to cook a hamburger patty. That single discovery became the foundation for everything that followed. Cathy took a boneless chicken breast, hand-breaded it, seasoned it, pressure cooked it, and served it on a plain toasted bun with 2 pickle chips. The sandwich was simple, fast, and different from anything else being served in fast food at the time, since almost every other chain was built entirely around beef. After perfecting the recipe at the Dwarf Grill, Cathy registered the name Chick-Fil-A for his growing chicken sandwich business. In 1967, Cathy opened the first restaurant actually carrying the Chick-Fil-A name inside Atlanta's Greenbrier Shopping Center, choosing a mall location instead of a standalone building. That decision made Chick-Fil-A one of the earliest fast food chains built specifically for shopping mall food courts, a format that helped the brand expand quickly without the cost of building freestanding restaurants. The mall strategy worked well for years, but Cathy had one more decision to make about the business, one shaped less by strategy and more by his personal faith. Cathy was a devout Southern Baptist, and his religious beliefs shaped nearly every major decision he made running the company. During his early years working the Dwarf Grill non-stop, 6 days a week with long shifts, Cathy eventually decided he needed one day of rest, both for himself and for his employees. He chose to close the restaurant every Sunday, following the Christian tradition of treating the day as one meant for church and family rather than work. That decision carried forward into every Chick-fil-A location opened after it, whether owned directly by the company or run by an independent franchise operator. Every single restaurant in the chain closes on Sundays, along with Thanksgiving and Christmas, a policy that has remained in place for the entire history of the company, regardless of how large it has grown. Cathy explained the choice simply, saying the closure was his way of honoring his faith and pointing his attention toward things that mattered more than the business itself. The Sunday closure became one of the most recognizable things about the brand, something competitors never copied and customers never forgot. Cathy backed that same set of values with an unusual amount of personal generosity. And that generosity became just as central to the Cathy family story as the chicken sandwich itself. Truett Cathy and his wife Jeanette took in more than 150 foster children over the course of their marriage, opening their home to kids who needed stability during difficult periods in their lives. In 1984, Cathy formalized that commitment by founding the WinShape Foundation, a charitable organization built around foster care homes, youth summer camps, and programs rooted in Christian values. Multiple WinShape foster homes were eventually built across Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, and even Brazil, each housing up to a dozen children with full-time foster parents. Cathy also poured money into education for his own employees. Starting in 1973, Chick-Fil-A began offering college scholarships to restaurant team members, a program that has since given out tens of millions of dollars to workers pursuing higher education. Cathy often said he never went to college himself, and that gap in his own life was part of what pushed him to fund it for the people working in his restaurants. By the time Cathy reached his later years, Chick-fil-A had grown into one of the largest privately owned restaurant chains in the country, with more than 1,800 locations open at the time of his death. Cathy passed away on September 8, 2014, at the age of 93. Leadership of the company had already shifted to the next generation the year before he died, placed in the hands of his oldest son. Truett Cathy stayed personally involved in marketing well into his final years. When the company introduced its now famous cow mascots in 1995, encouraging customers to eat more chicken instead of beef, Cathy loved the reaction so much, he kept a bag of small plush cows in the trunk of his car, handing them out to children at restaurants and even airports whenever he traveled. He was also closely tied to college football through a long-running bowl game sponsorship based in Atlanta, which has carried the Chick-fil-A name in various forms since 1997, further cementing the family's presence across the American South, well beyond the restaurant business itself. Dan Cathy, Truett's first child, was born in 1953 and grew up literally inside the family business, doing odd jobs around the restaurant from a young age, including scraping gum off the bottom of tables. He earned a business degree from Georgia Southern University and worked his way up through operations before eventually becoming company president in 2001. In 2013, Dan officially took over as chairman and chief executive of Chick-fil-A. Dan's leadership stretch coincided with the fastest period of growth in the company's history. Between 2013 and 2021, domestic sales climbed from roughly $5 billion a year to more than $16 billion. During his tenure, Dan leaned heavily on customer service as the company's core differentiator, pushing a culture built around treating customers with what he called honor, dignity, and respect, something that became closely tied to the brand's public image. Dan also became a public figure in ways his father generally avoided. In 2012, comments he made publicly regarding his opposition to same-sex marriage sparked significant national controversy, drawing both large-scale protests outside restaurants and strong support from customers who agreed with his views, leading to a sharp spike in sales that same year. Records later showed that both the Cathy family and the WinShape Foundation had directed millions of dollars toward political and social causes tied to those beliefs. In 2014, Dan stated publicly that he felt WinShape getting involved in political and social debates had been a mistake, though the foundation continued some level of related giving in the years after. Dan stepped down as chief executive in 2021, staying on as chairman while handing daily leadership to the next generation of the family. Andrew Cathy, Dan's son and Truett's grandson, became the third chief executive in company history on November 1st, 2021, at around age 43. Like the family members before him, Andrew worked his way through the business rather than stepping straight into the top job, spending time in restaurant operations and human resources before taking the CEO role. He is named directly after his grandfather, carrying the middle name Truett as a link back to the founder. Under Andrew's leadership, the company pushed further into international markets, opening its first restaurants in the United Kingdom and Singapore in 2025. Domestic sales kept climbing during his early tenure as well, with the chain posting double-digit growth in some years and continuing to rank as one of the highest-earning restaurant brands per location in the entire fast food industry. Chick-fil-A now operates well over 3,000 locations, the overwhelming majority run through the company's unusual franchise model, where individual operators invest a relatively small amount up front while the corporation covers the bulk of startup costs. Though operators are not permitted to own multiple stores or pass their location down to family members the way ownership works at the very top of the company. Alongside Dan and Andrew, other members of the family have remained closely involved in the business without stepping into the spotlight. Don Cathy, known within the family as Bubba, has served for decades as executive vice president and runs the company's Dwarf House and Truett's Grill divisions, restaurants built as a direct tribute to the original diner where the whole company began. Trudy Cathy White, Truett's only daughter, has worked as a company ambassador and has also continued the family's philanthropic focus through WinShape and related charitable organizations. Ownership of the company has remained split among these siblings and their children since Truett's death, keeping full control inside the family more than 75 years after Truett first opened the Dwarf Grill. Chick-Fil-A remains entirely privately held, with no public stock and no outside shareholders. According to Forbes wealth estimates, Dan Cathy, Bubba Cathy, and Trudy Cathy White have each been valued at well over $10 billion individually in recent years, placing all three siblings among the wealthiest people in the world, and making the Cathy family one of the richest family-owned business dynasties in the United States. Combined, the family fortune has been estimated at well over $40 billion. The company itself does not release detailed public financial statements the way publicly traded competitors are required to, but restaurant industry reporting has placed Chick-fil-A's annual system-wide sales well above $16 billion, with the chain consistently posting the highest average sales per restaurant of any major fast food brand in the country, despite being closed an entire extra day each week compared to its competitors. That single fact, more revenue per store while operating fewer days, has made the company a frequent case study in business circles. Despite the size of the fortune involved, the Cathy family has largely avoided the kind of public spotlight that follows many billionaire dynasties. Most family members keep a low personal profile outside of company events, philanthropic work, and occasional public comments tied to their religious beliefs. The company headquarters remains in College Park, Georgia, just a short distance from the original Hateville diner where the entire empire started, with 10 stools and 4 tables. This story does not move in a straight line, from a small diner to a multi-billion-dollar empire. It runs through a Depression-era childhood spent selling soda on the street just to help pay rent. It runs through 15 years of running a tiny grill before the chicken sandwich that made the family's fortune was even invented. It runs through a decision to close every single restaurant one full day a week, a choice that could have crippled a smaller competitor, but instead became one of the brand's most recognizable traits. It runs through a public controversy that split customers into 2 camps, and somehow made the company more profitable rather than less. Every chicken sandwich sold across more than 3,000 restaurants today traces back to a pressure fryer Truett Cathy found in the early 1960s, and a decision he made years earlier to never open on Sundays. His children expanded that small chicken stand into a company worth tens of billions of dollars, while keeping ownership entirely inside the family the entire time. 3 generations in, the Cathys still run the company their father built out of a 10-stool diner next to a Ford factory, and there is no indication that control is heading anywhere outside the family anytime soon. If you got something out of this video, consider subscribing. It takes just 3 seconds, and it helps us continue creating content like this.